first part of the install is going to be taking the tires off, and then we're going to start with installing the front mounting brackets. This is obviously on a Bobcat, but depending on what other models you can do, like on different Rangers and things, the mounting bracket might look a little bit different, but it's going to be very similar as far as how it goes on. There's 4 bolts that hold it on along with some spacers, and it does outline in the instructions exactly how they need to go. You can see here we're drilling the bottom bracket and just to line it up through the stock A-arm. There's 2 holes that are already there, but you have to make the holes a little bit bigger so that the bolts actually will fit through. And to get the right size, you can just check it. Like I say, one of the holes is actually the right size from the factory. And then from there, the mounting brackets and the ball joints and everything are pre-put together, so you have to just disassemble and reassemble around the A-arm. And like I say, specifics as far as all that goes is in the instructions, but this here just kind of shows how they mount. And both sides are labeled right hand and left hand when they come from us, so you won't have to guess there as far as which one goes on which side. We don't have technical torque specs on any of these bolts that are going on. You're just going to tighten them up as tight as you can get them. I like to use a 3/8 ratchet and wrench on all of them, and that pretty much gets you to the right spec. On the front there, those aluminum spacers that are in there, depending on how much paint is on the A-arm and how much is on the bracket, you may need to shave down that aluminum spacer just a little bit so that you can get it to fit up against the A-arm tight. It should be a really snug fit when it goes on. And then we're just going to mirror that same thing on the other side here. Then we're going to move on to the back. These have spacers that go in. They're aluminum shafts there, like that I'm pounding in on the back, and that's going to allow it so that when you mount up this rear bracket, that's what you're going to thread the bolts into. And so the rear is actually a pretty simple bracket, and that does have a left hand and right hand label on them as well. And so it runs 2 bolts in through that rear shaft, and then 2 nuts right there that are getting tightened up on the inside part of the bracket. Like I say, they're the same on both sides, but they are labeled right hand, left hand, just to make sure that they go on right, because technically you can mount the wrong one on the wrong side, so that's why we have them labeled. Those bolts that are going in with the lock washer on them, it's a good idea to put Loctite on those just so that they can't back out. The other nuts that are going on there are ones that have the thread locker in them, so they should be just fine. And then same thing, there's not really a torque spec, it's just getting them until they're nice and tight. And then from there, it's putting on the rear tracks. They're going to mount up with the same stock lug nuts that you used that the tires came off with. And so those are going to get put on. You may have to put the machine in neutral or park so that you can rotate the tracks to get where you can have room there to get the gun on there. And then on those, the torque spec is 120 foot-pounds. Right now we have the machine completely in the air, but if you only have a floor jack, which is fairly common, you can just pick up the back end and do that, or the front end and do that first. So you can definitely do, you don't have to do all 4 in the air at the same time. So now we're putting the fronts on, and this is going to be the same thing, just kind of spinning the tracks so that we can get all 4 lug nuts started and then get them tightened up. And the fronts are the same thing, 120 foot-pounds. And now once you have the tracks on, right there we're tightening the inside bracket that comes with it, and that is going to be something that's pre-installed on the tracks themselves when they come from us. So basically what you're doing is threading that rod end into the rod, and once you have that threaded in, there is a measurement from nut to nut there. On this machine specifically, it's 4 7/8, but depending on the machine, it may be different, so you just want to make sure to read the instructions to get the exact right measurement there. When you end up tipping it up and down, that's where having it in the air to do that is necessary to be able to get it and be able to move that to get that right measurement on the front there. And then same thing right here in the rear. That measurement's a lot smaller, again, per instructions for each individual machine, but that's going to be the same thing. And so to get the right measurement on those, actually, you're going to thread them in and get them started, and then set the back end of the machine on the ground where it's flat. And from there, that allows you to tighten it up and get the correct measurement. After all 4 of those brackets inside there are correct as far as measurement from nut to nut, you are done and the machine is good to go. The tension of the tracks is set from the factory from us, so you don't have to worry about that. It's just something to keep an eye on and then recheck after you get the first 50 to 100 miles on. And everything else as far as usage of the tracks is all in the instructions. But if you have any questions, you can obviously give us a call or shoot us an email.